Well, it's time once again to go out to the other coast of the United States of America to a little village called Hollywood to find out what's happening in the motion picture business with Michael Snyder. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Alex, and greetings, listeners. Hope everyone's having a lovely time wherever they happen to be. We've got some new movies. Let's get right to them. There's an all-new animated version of the Grinch's classic story. That's the one about the nasty Christmas-hating creature written and illustrated by the great Dr. Seuss, this time with Benedict Cumberbatch voicing the Grinch. It's colorful, lush, fancy, well-rendered computer animation from the folks at Illumination, who created Gru and the Minions of the Despicable Me movies, so they know about anti-heroes. That said, this is better than the Jim Carrey live-action Bore, but still not close to the greatness of Chuck Jones' 2D animated adaptation, which remains greener, leaner, and certainly meaner than any other interpretations of the original book. And it has its meanest of Grinches as well. And because he's so mean in the Chuck Jones version and in the story that spawned it, it makes his transformation at the end of the movie that much more impactful than this one, regardless of how beautiful and elaborate this current version is. There's a lot of padding to the plot, and Illumination knows how to make a villain sympathetic, because that's what they did in Despicable Me, and how to make characters cute, which is what they did with their Minions. But the Grinch is a special case. He's prickly, genuinely sinister to begin with, and only through redemption does he become lovable. And since this Grinch is softer and more understandably misanthropic from the get-go, the emotional weight of his conversion is kind of weakened. Illumination is doing a CGI animated take on the classic video game Super Mario Brothers next. I'm just guessing here, but I expect it'll make this Grinch seem like The Incredibles or Toy Story by comparison, and I fear we shall see. By the way, Rashida Jones, Angela Lansbury, and Kenan Thompson are among the voice actors here. Thompson does some funny work, but the Grinch, I guess if you need to take the kids somewhere this weekend, that'll do. I am way more excited about Overlord. Although it was touted as possibly part of J.J. Abrams' loosely connected Cloverfield sci-fi movies, Overlord is a standalone and quite a good one that manages to mash up a World War II military drama with science fiction. And the result is a very well-made and satisfying B-movie style thriller. It's no big spoiler to say that a group of American paratroopers, including the usual mix of types, including like a wise guy Brooklynite, a drawling good old boy, a cold-blooded kind of taciturn corporal who's seen too much and killed too many, etc. These guys are sent behind enemy lines in France on a life-or-death mission to destroy a Nazi radio transmitter right before the Allies' D-Day landing. And it's also not a spoiler to say that what they uncover there is an unholy experiment by the Germans that could change the outcome of the war in a very horrifying way. I'm just glad that they didn't call this Saving Private Zombie. Wait, sorry. Spoiler. Just kidding. There are zombie-like creatures in the trailers for the film, and seeing them did not lessen the fun and the tension of the movie in the least. I had a great time at Overlord, and it sounds, like it might be your type of movie. And if it does, you're going to enjoy it too. JJ produced, a relative newcomer named Julius Avery directed, and the script was co-written by Billy Ray, who wrote Captain Phillips and The Hunger Games, and I'll forgive him for the latter. You're probably going to recognize Wyatt Russell as the hard-ass soldier and Ian DeCastecker of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as a journalist, but what matters here is the wild and wacky story being told. I totally bought into Overlord. All right, The Girl in the Spider's Web, subtitled A New Dragon Tattoo Story, so you get that it's a continuation of the tale of punky avenging computer hacker Lisbeth Salander and journalist Michael Bloomfist. Isn't quite as good as the first English-language movie derived from author Stig Larsson's Millennium Trilogy about this mismatched duo. And that means it falls even shorter of the Scandinavian movie trilogy based on the books. But there are lots of spies and cyber hijinks and corrupt government weasels and twisted family trees to keep things moving. This time out, Rooney Mara and Daniel Craig from the first English-language Dragon Tattoo movie are replaced as Lisbeth and Mikhail by Claire Foy and Sverre Gudnason, who the latter guy, I don't know, clearly some kind of Scandinavian actor, and they're both solid. And it's quite a leap for Foy to go from Elizabeth in The Crown to Lisbeth in Spider's Web, and she's so good, and she so disappears into the character that you wish she had a story and script worthy of her, rather than something adapted from Larson's posthumous post-Dragon Tattoo trilogy notes. In other words, he didn't write this fourth book that follows the trilogy, and these guys here in the States decided they weren't going to cover the second and third books. They were just going to leap into this one. Not great. I mean, I'll tell you what, I watched it. I like this kind of thing, but it did fall short in a big way of the earlier movies, both Scandinavian and the American adaptation. Finally, in feature films, we have The Front Runner, and for something that was such a scandal in its day, the story of the rise and fall of 1988 Democratic presidential hopeful Gary Hart seems pretty toothless and perfunctory in these times, but I thought that The Front Runner was well made, well wrought, fine performances. It's nice to get some of the insights that maybe we didn't know about Hart's escapades, sexual dalliances, which led to him being smeared by a very diligent bunch of reporters out of the Miami Herald, and his entire campaign is derailed. I have to say, Jason Reitman wrote this, and along with a couple co-authors, and directed it, and Hugh Jackman as Gary Hart and Vera Farmiga as his wife Lee are pretty damn good. But, you know, this is the sort of thing you could watch on video and get the same effect. Good performances, an interesting story, but again, you know, we've been here, we've done this. The Post was a movie about an earlier political situation that had a lot more potency, and I didn't think that was all that great. So caveat emptor. Speaking of things you can watch on video, Netflix has something very, very cool that is in theaters as well, by the way, and I just want to highly recommend The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. It's a treat whether you catch it on Netflix or see it on the big screen, where I bet you it'll look pretty damn lovely in a kind of retro, kind of a John Ford way. First thing you need to know is it's the work of the Coen brothers, who crack out a thoroughly entertaining, funny, and occasionally morbid anthology of 6 distinct, sometimes dark and sometimes daffy stories from the Old West, starting with a delightfully musical and slightly weird tale taken from the title. And I mean, it's full on Coen. The second thing you need to know is that the cast is a blast to watch in this context, from Tim Blake Nelson as Buster Scruggs, a singing cowboy who was more than handy with a gun as well as a guitar, to James Franco as kind of a hapless but lucky bank robber, Liam Neeson as the proprietor of a two-man traveling show, Zoe Kazan as a frontier maiden on a wagon train, and Tom Waits as a grizzled prospector. I mean, I really enjoyed The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and I think it's totally cool that you can watch it on Netflix as well as at the theater. I wasn't so crazy about it. Another Netflix offering, Outlaw King, with Chris Pine as 14th century Scottish outlaw king Robert the Bruce, who beat the English army. It's kind of a post-Braveheart movie with some good performances and some familiar actors from the UK. And directed by a guy who did incredible work with Hell or High Water, a man named David Mackenzie. This falls short of that. But, you know, this is something you could watch at home if you like this sort of thing. You need a Braveheart fix. This is a continuation of that story. What are you watching, buddy?
Well, you know, what I watch? I watched the Wells movie. Did I mention that last week?
No, we spoke about the movie and also the documentary, and I was glad you had a chance to see it. What do you say?
I suggest people watch the documentary first, because I think it puts the film in a certain context that makes it more accessible. For instance, I didn't think it was that good, the film. And then I watched the documentary, and then I went back and watched the film and enjoyed it much more, understanding where he was coming from. So that's my suggestion to people.
Yeah, The Other Side of the Wind is the original, I guess, Wells's last film, completed posthumously again. And the documentary is by Morgan, I was going to say Morgan Freeman, the guy who directed 20 Feet from Stardom, and also Won't You Be My Neighbor, the recent documentary about Fred Rogers. Morgan Freeman? Morgan Spurlock? I don't know, a guy named Morgan. Anyway, FYI. And that's it, I guess.
Okay, yep, that's it. Tell them where they can find you, Michael.
I am on Twitter at Culture Blaster, on Facebook at Michael Snyder's Culture Blast page, and here on GABNet.
Thank you very much, Michael. And I'm Alex Bennett. And if you listen 24/7, there's more GABNet coming up right now. And if not, you're listening to us on demand. Look at the stuff right below us and listen to some of that stuff. We'll see you next week, Michael.